Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Tumpale Sakijege. I am an urban planner by profession, but my research interest area is on disaster risk reduction. Therefore, today's topic is about diverse factors for floods in the city of Dar es Salaam. Before I start my presentation, I would like to encourage you listeners that I have indicated various literature at the end of the slides. Therefore, you are allowed to have them and read for improving your understanding regarding floods and risk reduction in Dar es Salaam and in the world. My presentation will have about 6 components, which includes introduction, major causes of floods, how should floods be managed, and then weaknesses of the current flood management in Dar es Salaam, and then what can be done to reduce flood risks, and finally policy implication, especially to our disaster management policies in Tanzania. Okay, before I start introducing the city of Dar es Salaam, I would like to let you know that we have climate change. It is being discussed all over the world. It is not a new phenomenon. Therefore, if you go through literature, you will find a lot about climate change over the world. It has impact on the floods, heat, and many other disasters. In this case, we will talk about floods as one of the impact of climate change. And the case study that I am discussing today is the city of Dar es Salaam. As you can see in this map here, this is the city of Dar es Salaam, which is characterized by a lot when it comes to informal settlements. About 70% of the city is informally developed. In this map, the brown color indicates areas where informal settlements have grown. And another characteristics of informal settlements in Dar es Salaam is they are ignoring planning standards in the development of their settlements. So if you go through the city of Dar es Salaam, it's easy to find settlements whereby it's hard even to access them when driving your car, or you will hardly find drainage channels to contain stormwater. So that's all about informal settlements. But also the city of Dar es Salaam, it is growing very fast. Nowadays, according to the recent census, which was conducted last year in 2022, we are about more than 5 million. Unlike in 1978, where we used to be below 1 million. So you can get the picture that the population is increasing very fast. So increase in population is again another factor that is causing problem when it comes to disasters in Dar es Salaam and Tanzania in general. Another important thing that I need to emphasize is about the issue of catchment areas. Dar es Salaam city has a total of 19 catchment areas. This is according to the research which was done by DMDP. It was in 2014. But in all these catchment areas, there are no technical plans to manage stormwater. So you will see later that it's also among the factors that leads to floods in the city of Dar es Salaam. Let us now start discussing about the causes of floods. What caused floods in the city of Dar es Salaam? If you go through literature, you will come across some scholars who argue that climate being only factor that causing floods. It could be true, but that can be in other areas probably. But we need to understand the context-specific factors for the cause of floods. In our case, because today we are discussing about Dar es Salaam, I agree that climate plays a noteworthy role when it comes to occurrence of floods, but it is not the only factor. There are a number of factors that cause floods in the city of Dar es Salaam. We have about 6 or 7 factors, so we'll see one after the other. The first one is escalation of impervious surface. If you can recall about the introduction of the city of Dar es Salaam, the population is increasing, and it is increasing informally without following standards. So population or the residents construct buildings without adhering to standards. They don't consider even space between buildings. They don't consider living open spaces. And we all know that if you have an open space or bare land or a land which is not covered, it supports infiltration during rain. But nowadays, we are covering the land to the extent that when it's rainwater fails to infiltrate. They end up running off over the surface and leads to floods. The second important factor to note is about rapid spatial urbanization in informality. Rapid spatial urbanization in informality. The city of Dar es Salaam is growing. We have seen the population growth. And the growth is unguided. That's why I'm using the terminology informal settlements. And most of these settlements are located in low-lying areas. In other words, they are called floodplain or valleys. And according to geography, these low-lying lands are meant for draining rainwater towards the ocean. But nowadays, they are covered. And the majority of population who prefer to reside in informal settlements, one of the options that they consider is cheap access to land. They are not able to construct houses in planned areas because of the procedures that they are required to follow, like engaging experts in construction. So they resort to the use of local artisans, who according to them, they are cheap and easily available. Therefore, we have rapid spatial urbanization in informality. You can see here an example of settlement which is informally developed. It is Kigogo. It is easily seen whereby there is concentration of buildings. You can see no spaces between buildings. You hardly see trees or vegetation, no open space. So all these are vulnerable environment that exacerbates the problem of flooding in the city of Dar es Salaam. Another picture here showing an informal settlement inundated by flood. This was captured in Keko Machungwa. And you can see you can see here one of the settlement again, which is close to Keko Machungwa, that shows floods, the way they have surrounded the settlements, and it is also affecting economic activities because some of the buildings, as you can see, they are for, it indicates work offices. We also experience effects on our economic activities. So in such a situation where you find inundation of water in our environment, it's hard to go to work, it's hard to proceed with economic activities. There are so many effects when it comes to flooding. Others like breeding grounds for mosquitoes. When you have floods, it means you are creating conducive environment for mosquitoes. And finally, we increase the rate of malaria. In addition to the factors that I have discussed, we see other factors, which is weak capacity in physical development control. The flood hazards in Dar es Salaam dates back in 1890s during colonial era. By then, colonial masters did not put emphasis on the planning of the city of Dar es Salaam, especially the physical planning. It's like they ignored it. We are saying they ignored it, or according to literature, it is reported that the colonial masters ignored the physical planning of the city because they planned the settlement in the low-lying land. And if you can recall from the beginning, we heard that low-lying areas are meant for draining stormwater. So it's not a surprise to see areas like city center of the city of Dar es Salaam being flooded. It's because they were planned in a low-lying land. And nowadays, even the existing authorities, they have turned a blind eye to the physical development of the city. They are not taking any initiatives to replan the city, to redesign or to redevelop the city. And therefore, we are still continuing facing the problem of floods because of following the colonial style of planning in the city of Dar es Salaam. We have other factors, which is about geomorphology, climate change, and variability. The city of Dar es Salaam is well known that it is located in the low-lying coastal area. So being located in a low-lying coastal area, it means that the city is susceptible to flooding. And according to scholars, the topographical analysis suggests that the floodplains in the city are flat in nature. So if they are flat, it means when it rains, they accelerate the speed of storm water. And therefore, if you combine with other factors like hazard development or informal developments, when it rains, it means water will go speed, but again, we don't have other facilities that will contain it to the extent that it will continue to affect the surroundings. For the case of climate variability, we have heard from the beginning that climate is changing and is causing a lot of problems to our settlements. And with regard to the city of Dar es Salaam, it's easy to witness heavy precipitation in the season that we had never experienced before. Therefore, we experience floods even in the short rain, that is from November, December, while in reality we usually used to know that heavy floods or heavy precipitation normally occurs in the March, April, May. But nowadays, due to climate change, it can rain anytime. That is because of climate change and variability. Therefore, climate is among the factors that causing floods in the city of Dar es Salaam. It is important to point out that we have limited coverage of drainage infrastructure. If you go around the city of Dar es Salaam, it is common to find drainage channels alongside the road, but most of them have been constructed in order to protect roads and not for containing stormwater. If you go through the informal settlements, you will hardly find drainage channels or infrastructure that are meant to contain stormwater. And wherever you find a drainage channel, in most of the cases you will see is an individual who is taking initiative to contain the stormwater. But when it comes to the government, the situation is either not inadequate or very limited. And in most cases, it's easy to find the drainage systems which are present, yes, but in low capacity, and sometimes they are not maintained to the extent that it's easy to find blockage and no one is giving it like priority to clean them. So when it rains, they act as a blockage to stormwater. So water will automatically overflow and affect the surrounding settlements. Another important point to consider when discussing about the causes of floods in the city is low coverage of solid waste collection. We have the issue of solid waste, whereby according to literature, it is only 37% of the solid waste being generated are collected. The rest, that means 63, is not collected. So you can ask yourself that, where are these wastes go? It means the local community or households, residents, they find other means of disposing the solid waste. And if you will get time to read literature, you will see a number of scholars who have reported like streams or rivers that passing through the settlements being used as a dumping site for the uncollected solid waste. So again, low coverage of solid waste collection is a problem to floods because they will end up block the drainage systems, and when it rains, automatically rainwater will find another way to run through the settlement. So finally, regarding the causes of floods, all factors, I can say they are important and they are interrelated. You cannot discuss one factor in isolation. In other words, they all like work together in a collective strength to bring the problem of floods. So when it comes to what are the measures now that need to be done, or how can we manage floods in the city of Dar es Salaam, it is very, very important to make sure that we work out all the factors without ignoring even a single one in managing the floods. So when it comes to the inadequate infrastructure, we have to make sure that we seriously invest in infrastructure. We also need to have things like integrated planning. By integrated planning, it means we have to involve all stakeholders when developing our cities or when planning for flood management, be it engineers, urban planners, those who are dealing with solid waste. They need to work together to make sure that they come up with a clear solution or a one consensus to make sure that floods in Dar es Salaam is being managed through discussion or agreement with all stakeholders. Another important thing that is need to be considered when managing floods is about proper urban planning and land use management. This is very crucial because we have more than 70% of the city being developed informally. And it is being developed informally because of the failure of our urban planning and land use management in the city. So it is very important to make sure that urban planning is done properly and land use management is considered in our flood management initiatives. The current practice of the flood management is surrounded with a weakness, and the most important weakness is absence of a technical plan. I presented from the beginning about the catchment areas in the city of Dar es Salaam. So if you can recall the map, it's easy to say that almost every part of the city of Dar es Salaam has either a stream or a river. And when it rains, it means in case we have excess rain or excess precipitation, then those rivers or streams will overflow. But one of the weaknesses in our management system is that we don't have a technical plan on how to manage stormwater whenever it rains. Therefore, that's the very big weakness that needs to be sorted out to make sure that we manage flood risks in the city of Dar es Salaam. We need to do some things in order to reduce flood risks in the city. Number one is catchment, area assessment, and mapping. We need to do a research in order to come up with assessment of the catchment areas. We have about 19 catchment areas, as I said before, And these catchment areas, they need to be known. And we need to know the extent of the flood coverage or the stormwater coverage whenever it rains. We are not supposed to ignore whether the size of the catchment area, but we need also to have consider like all the catchment, and each single catchment must have a technical plan. And that technical plan will also be need to develop like having strategies for managing or for being used by our communities. And the technical plans that I am referring, they need to start from the household level to the city level, because when it rains, the impact affects everyone. So we need to make sure that anyone who is affected is part and parcel of the strategy or is part and parcel of the technical plan. Therefore, we need to have strategies at household level. For instance, nowadays you can see it is very common to construct a house with gutter. Many people using it for rainwater harvesting. That is very important. It needs to be encouraged. So it shouldn't be a question of one individual or one household, but we all have to make sure that at household level we participate in flood management. So there should be strategies for how to contain rainwater when it's rain at household level. But again, it is also important to have technical plans at plot level. When you have your house, we normally being surrounded by, let's say, gardening, we prepare paving blocks, but if you can recall the point of imperviousness, the moment you prepare or you cover your surface with paving blocks, it means you are making hard for rainwater to infiltrate. So we need to develop strategies or a technical plan that will guide our plot arrangement at lower level. It is also important to have technical plans at neighborhood level, because at the neighborhood level is where you will find streams being formulated. And a collective or a collection of a number of streams in different or from various neighborhoods will automatically join together and continue to the city at large. So we need to have technical plans at each stage, and finally at the city level. And by the way, at the city level, the city council is the one which is responsible for managing or controlling floods at the city. So once you have a combination of these plans from the household level, neighborhood level, community level, then you will automatically have a complete plan for the city to work it on. So finally, what I'm trying to say here is that we need to make sure that we have collective efforts in managing floods, especially by making sure that we control a single drop of rain when it's falling by storing water and sometimes using it before it reaches the downstream. Finally, its policy implications. What are the implications to our policies, especially the flood management, the disaster management policy of Tanzania? It is important for it to be reviewed. We need to review the policy and make sure that it integrates the issue of technical plans. Once that is done, there should also be sort of development of regulations which will act as an enforcement mechanism to make sure that everybody is, or everyone should comply with the regulations. Thereafter, or at the end, we will be able to manage floods in the city of Dar es Salaam. That's the end of my lecture today. Thank you for watching and listening.